The best salespeople in the world are the ones who do it without you even noticing. Everyone's a salesperson, especially if you're an entrepreneur. In the I'm Not Salesy podcast, join me, Cassie McKenzie, and my fabulous guests as we dive into the top strategies, mindset, and energetics around sales and money so that you can hear more, yes, I'm in, instead of crickets or getting ghosted. So if you're ready to fully book out your programs with aligned AF clients and have people chasing you down in your inbox, asking how to work with you, then subscribe to this podcast today and become not salesy too. Oh my God, welcome back for another episode of I'm Not Salesy. And we're entering into season 2 of I'm Not Salesy. And in my previous podcast, I never had seasons, but this one, I'm like, okay, season 1 had its vibe, and season 2 is going to be next freaking level. And if you're desiring like higher level conversations around sales and marketing, and especially selling your way to $1 million business, then that's what I'm Not Salesy is going to be about, because I truly believe you don't have to be salesy with your ideal clients and like with your dream clients. It's not about pushing, because let's face it, you're going to end up doing that in your coaching calls and in your, consulting, and as a service online service provider, you're going to end up having to push there too, right? So this is going to be such a perfect conversation. I have the best guest today. I have Jenna Faye Madden, and she's a conscious leadership and business mentor. Jenna's a visionary soul evolution guide, a new earth architect, and a 7-figure leadership and business mentor dedicated to empowering conscious female entrepreneurs. And I love that. So she's coming all the way from Mexico to come on the podcast today. And she's the CEO of Soul Meet Strategy, leading feminine leaders on a transformative journey to ascend into their highest timeline, embody your full magic, and scale your soul business sustainably. So welcome, Jenna. I love it. It's so exciting to meet you.
Hey, Cassie, thanks so much for having me here. I am pumped for this conversation.
I know. We were talking a little bit prior to this, and I was like, wait a second, I've got to just start to hit record because this is some good shit. We're going to get into like some great conversations here. I'm so excited. So today we're going to be really diving into how like your journey to 7 figures, and also how being magnetic to create more soul clients played a part in that journey. So I'm really stoked to get started. And in the conversations we were having before, we were talking about, because I want to let you guys in on like the behind the scenes, but we were talking about how I am shifting who I'm working with now. And over the last couple months, I've been shifting into it, not necessarily people who are beginners at business, but those who are, building and scaling to that 15 to 50K mark, where you're really going into multiple 6-figure businesses. Like you're all in, both feet, no half-assing it, like nothing like that, right? And so I know for a big, like a actually, I want to ask you, let me ask about your journey, like, building, going from, having your business starting out to reaching that 7-figure mark. Can you take us on a little bit of that timeline on how choosing your, soul client or committing to your soul client played a part in that?
Yeah, absolutely, because it really has shifted and evolved. So, a quick little bit of backstory in terms of how I really started in my business and who I started working with. When I left my corporate job, which was about 7.5 years ago, after dabbling and building things a little bit online, basically while I was at my corporate job and in
Yeah.
the pockets of time in between, when I quit and went all in on my business with like no plan, no savings, minimal experience in the online space,
Burn,
I was
right?
doing a combination of network marketing, of personal training, and nutrition coaching. And then I added in kind of spiritual life coaching. And pretty quickly, within about a year and a half, things evolved and my best clients, number one, I realized I was more passionate about helping them as a person and their mindset than I was just about like weight loss. And I was seeing a lot about like the behind the scenes of what keeps people going in the same loops. And I would have clients go, okay, well, like, how did you quit your job and manifest your husband? And now you're traveling full time. And now I know what my purpose is. Like, how do I do this too? So it kind of moved in a more business leadership direction. And over the years, it's really evolved. So very naturally in those early stages, although I had experience growing my own businesses and I was taking programs and hiring mentors and learning a whole bunch about social media and that whole side of things, I feel like I was most suited in a way to work with beginner entrepreneurs, especially because a lot of my clients were women who didn't yet have businesses and they were kind of discovering their purpose, passion, wanting to turn it into a business.
Mhm.
But 7 years later, there's been so much evolution that's happened. I mean, I've invested well more than $250,000 in my own learnings and education. So
It
like
adds up
there's
quickly, doesn't
it
it?
it does. Yeah, and like that means I've not only invested money, but like so much time
Yeah.
learning and implementing things. I
Wow.
mean, I've grown my business to like 1.5 million in cash over these years,
Mhm.
and I've worked with over 1,000 clients. And so there kind of came a point along my path where I thought, okay, number one, I'm honestly not the most passionate about helping brand new entrepreneurs because there's people out there who are more passionate about it. And my genius and where I really shine is things like offer design, scaling, marketing. And to me, it's much easier to apply that with people who are a few seasons, a few cycles into their business. Like they're more established. They're not wondering who and what they want to be when they grow up.
Yeah.
They have started, building a bit of a presence. And it's not like it's bad or wrong. We need new entrepreneurs. Like this is a good thing. And that isn't where my zone of genius is. So things have really shifted and evolved where now for me, most of my clientele are people who are typically making like 5 to 50K kind of months when we start working together. So we have something to build upon, to
Mhm.
scale, and to add in simplicity. Because I find in this industry, we take on a lot of things that aren't necessarily necessary or supportive. It's like this crazy echo chamber. And like we were talking about when we work with people, and I have caught myself backpedaling so many times, where I've had someone reach out because it's really easy to want things for people more than they want it for themselves, or to just, really want to help people. So I, as a recovering people pleaser, have said yes when my body has said no many times, even in recent months and years to clients where I kind of knew it wasn't 100% aligned. But every single time I do that, I'm always reminded and shown that it's a total confidence killer. It always ends up having me have a moment of like, wait, maybe I'm not that good at helping clients get results. Oh, maybe I'm not that good at calling in soul clients. So like when we kind of
Yeah.
deviate from it, I
Yeah.
find it actually has a ripple effect, of other things beyond just that client coach kind of relationship as well. So that was a little bit of a tangent, but that's kind of the evolution of what I've experienced so far on this journey.
Yeah, no, I resonate so much with that because then you don't end up getting a lot of great testimonials. You don't get a lot of great feedback. People are like,
Mhm.
well, I kind of implemented it, but then I got my period. This is the one I started hearing where I was like, this is fucking like I can't do this anymore. Like I've got to do like I've got to elevate who I'm, speaking to because the victim mentality, you can't strategy somebody out of a victim mentality. And you really
Totally.
can't like I feel like there's only so much mindset you can do for them. Like they've got to meet you halfway before even the energetics and the mindset can settle in, right? And so there came a point where even for me, I was like, if you tell me that you can't create content because you got your period for a week, like, no, I can't. Like, I'm not going to accept that. And no, it's not the two planets that are in retrograde. And no, it's not your ex-husband's fault either. Like, if you want a multiple six into seven-figure business, like I just think of my own sales career. Like I can't imagine it. Like our sales force is 80% women, right? Usually. Can you imagine if 80% of the sales force took off for a week every single month? Like it just wouldn't happen. And I granted, like you start your own business because it's not corporate America, but you're starting a corporation. Like you're just starting your own microcosm of what you used to work in, right? Like at some way, shape, or form. And so there comes this opportunity, I feel like, for us to call in more. And because I had one mentor say to me, because I was like, I'm just not like, I just don't like, she could tell, like, I just wasn't getting excited anymore. And I was kind of like, is it me? Do I not know my purpose? Do I not know? Am I not like tapped in completely? And she's like, no, you're just not getting paid, like what you're worth. You're not working with the right people. It's not exciting you, not because of the passion. You have the passion for this. It's just that you're not getting paid in return what you can actually contribute to the world. And I feel like as we start talking about calling in soul clients, where I know where I feel like it starts, but I'd love to hear your opinion, and your experience on where do you start with that whole process? Not at, and I don't mean as a newbie. I mean as somebody who is um in that kind of space that I was in, because I feel like that like everything's a gift, right? Like me going through that helps me help my clients, you know what I mean? So,
Totally.
but I'd love to
Yeah.
hear your
Yeah.
experience.
There's so much I could say on this, and I love that you brought it up because as you were sharing, I was thinking number one about, and maybe you've heard of the drama triangle, and I feel
No, I'm
no,
ready.
okay, oh gosh, that could be like a whole thing I could talk about in itself. But at a high level, the drama triangle is in essence, and I see this so much in the coaching world play out in this dynamic where there's basically victims and
Mm,
there's saviors, right? And so we play out this dynamic with ourselves where oftentimes we unintentionally project into our potential ideal client and of seeing them as victims,
yeah,
as seeing them as people that need to be saved. And then therefore we're speaking to those kinds of people. And then though therefore they're looking for the savior. And then we kind of get off on that,
yeah,
subconsciously that, now we're helping and we're saving. But obviously that only gets us to a certain point. It only has us working with certain people. And I wish I could have a little whiteboard out right now. So everyone listening, you'll just have to visualize this. But what I tell my clients and how I conceptualize this is a different type of triangle, so to speak. We're using all the triangle metaphors today. But if you can vision a little pyramid or a triangle, and there's kind of four levels to the triangle. And if we're at the top of the triangle, and that's a number four, so it's like 1, 2, 3, 4.
mhm,
We're not usually trying to take people past where we've taken ourselves, so to speak. Yes, of course, there's exceptions. Of course, we can work with people. And, I've worked with people and helped them do like $50 million deals. I
yeah,
have not made 50 million, but it's like I have the skill set to
yeah,
support those people. And I'm not trying to work with people who have that skill set developed yet. It's like that's why they hire me. So we're kind of at the top of our own pyramid, so to speak. At the bottom of the pyramid are the number one people. And these, to be clear, these are not bad people by
yeah,
any means, but they are usually more in victimhood. Like they're not really ready to make a buying decision. They're like more identified by their problem than they are about stepping into some sort of solution or transformation. And so these are the people who can be like the tire kickers. These are the people who might be engaging on our stuff but never buying, to which I usually say thank you. Thanks for bumping me up in the
yeah,
algorithm and maybe
exactly.
one day you'll be ready, but it's like that's not who I'm speaking to.
Right.
And if we get caught in that, then we kind of it's like that's all we end up seeing because we're just speaking to those people and feeling like those are the only people following us. So those people, I feel like they can hang out, but that's definitely not who we're speaking to. So then it leaves the twos and the threes. The
Yeah.
twos, I feel like are the people who they have a higher level of readiness. And this, applies to all niches and stuff. And it doesn't mean that they are per se beginners on their journey, but more earlier in their buying decision phase, we'll say, like they're reading the books, maybe they've bought programs, maybe they've worked with people before, but they're not necessarily like searching for that solution or their next mentor. Their consciousness and awareness of things is higher, and they can make really great clients, but I still don't feel like that's who I focus on speaking to. I focus on speaking to the people who are threes. To me, these are the people who have like already decided whatever we're talking, like they're gonna call in their soulmate, they're gonna have the $1 million business. Like it's already this full body decision that they've made, with or without me or with or without you. Like this is inevitable. They're on the path, the thing is happening, but they're also so open to the right support and
Yeah.
to collapse the timeline to make things easier. They want to learn, they want to implement, and the message really lands for them when it's done effectively, where it's like, boom, soulmate kind of match, let's do this, I'm in kind of energy. And those people, I think, when we speak to them, then we work with our favorite kind of clients, things
Mhm.
happen easier. And, the people who are ones and twos, they can follow along. Some of them might even buy as well, or they might jump into lower ticket things and be nurtured until they're ready. But I feel like, especially for close proximity, when we focus on the threes in our message and who we're really focused on working with, our confidence goes up, the client results goes up, like, and the ripple of that can be huge. So hopefully that metaphor
Yeah.
makes a semblance of sense without a little whiteboard, but
Yeah.
and can give everyone a visual.
No, it definitely made like in my sales career, like because I have a background in pharmaceutical sales and I started in as a specialty rep right out of college. So it was a position that a lot of people have to be in like as a calling on like primary care doctors for like 10 to 15 years,
Yeah.
like general practitioners before they get to the specialty. Whereas I came out right into it. So I was like thrown right into selling $1 billion drug. And so we have deciles in the pharma industry where your doctors are like the highest prescribers, like the ones that get it, the ones that see the patients and do something about it, prescribe the product, send them on their way. They don't have any kind of like, well, I don't know, like, you know what I mean? Like they're just like, I'm looking for a product, I'm going to use it. Their volume's very high. Like that's how we, like we stratify it out that way too. And it makes so much sense because like just like you said, the decile one. So the decile one, so it's backward. Well, actually, no, it's not backwards. The decile ones are the ones that like don't really prescribe a lot, like very low volume, and the tens are like the ones that are like your dream customers. Um, and it's like I remember getting a list where I was used to getting like accounts that were fives and sixes, like in certain job. And then I was in this job where there was like all like nines and tens, and I was like, oh my God, this is like like they're all just like shooting fish in a barrel. I can totally do this so easily. Anyway, but yeah, it makes such a difference because like the one, like you said, the ones aren't, it doesn't make them any, I don't know, like from my experience sometimes though, the ones just don't get it. Like they don't put the effort into learning more. They think they know it all. They think they are they do what has worked or what they learned 20 years ago in med school, whereas there's all these new ways to get to the finish line faster. They think things are too expensive. Like there's all the objections and it just feels like running through water instead of like running on
Yeah.
a treadmill. And I know where if you follow the 80/20 rule, I know where I spent all my time. So why do you think um why do you think more people don't speak to the threes and fours? And actually, you mentioned the threes, but what are like how come you direct your content to the threes and not the fours too, or do you? They're like interchangeable. Can you explain all that?
Yeah, totally. Like to me, the fours are the people who are kind of at the same level, so to speak. So I feel, like let's take a few examples, I think,
Mhm.
to give
Yeah.
context. So if I was a relationship coach helping people to find their soulmate, then I'm probably not going to market to women who feel like they already have their soulmate, who are like at that same level. I'm going to
Mhm.
speak to women who are like really committed to calling in their partner, to doing the inner work, to doing the outer work, who are kind of in that high three threshold, who feel
Yeah.
like this is, like they're not controlling it, but like they're so ready for that. In like a business sense, like I said, yes, it's not like just an income type
Yeah.
thing, but let's say if my main skill sets in marketing, sales, offer design, then I'm not really marketing to other women who are in a similar income range where that's their exact strengths as well.
Hmm.
So, maybe yes, like I have had clients who are in the same income range and they're, because we could all learn from each other. So, yes, there can be exceptions, but my marketing, who I focus on, is usually women who are really, really good at their craft. They're really good at what they do, but they don't necessarily have the strongest marketing sales
Yeah.
background kind of thing. So, even if they're at the same kind of playing field, in terms of the levels of strengths, we'll say, I feel
Yeah.
like there's a gap there, like there's something there. Same thing with like a nutrition coach.
Mm.
If they feel like they are walking the walk and talking the talk and they have all this knowledge, then they're not going to market to somebody who is maybe a fellow nutritionist
Hmm.
who isn't feeling good in their body. They're probably, talking to women who have tried the diets and tried the things, but they don't know how to balance their hormones and they don't have the knowledge to get to the root cause. So that's where I feel like there's just like a slight variation in the fours and threes, and we can market to the fours. But I think general rule of
Yeah.
thumb, I feel like mostly we're speaking to a past version of us who's
Hmm.
like a step or two behind, but not necessarily, unless we're really passionate about it, they're not necessarily at like the beginning of the journey. And kind of like you talked about, when women are saying like, oh, with my cycle or this or that, like that victim
Yeah.
kind of energy, which is funny timing because I literally last night wrote a whole post talking about like you can make money no matter what your mood is.
Yeah.
Like it's such a story and a construct we create, and especially people who get identified by that and they're kind of in that 1 to 2 mentality
Yeah.
doesn't make it wrong, but it doesn't necessarily either make them the best fit kind of clients for each of us to work with.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, and it makes it so frustrating. So, at least in my experience.
And usually frustrating for the client too, because if we're
Yeah.
feeling frustrated because they're not really who we want to work with, they can
Right.
usually feel that. And I always say like it's not a good sign if we have subtle resentment for our clients or we get that
Yeah.
Voxer message and our gut kind of drops and we're like, oh,
Yeah.
another 17-minute voice note, like
Yeah.
partly that's boundaries and stuff, but also partly maybe because we're not working with the right people.
Right, right. So how come you think people don't market more to the threes? Because I see a lot of different types of content out there because it's what I dork out on.
Totally.
And I feel like no matter how much I can help other people, I'm so drawn to like content and messaging and sales trainings and things like I don't know, maybe it's like the 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 genius zone. You know what I mean? Where you're like, "Oh, what else can I can go to bed reading personal development." My husband's like, "Why don't you read a fiction?" I'm like, "Why would I want to?"
I totally get it. Yeah, I think this is like a multi-layered thing,
Mhm.
at least in my experience. I mean, number one, I think from like the mindset side of things, most of us are deeply conditioned as women to be people pleasers, to not
Mhm.
want to leave people behind on like a biological tribe kind of level. And so I see that play
Yeah.
out in business where it's just really easy to kind of want to be in this like mothering support energy for our community, which is beautiful, but also there's kind of that fine line and a bit of an art to it where we can catch ourselves surrounding ourselves with like the ones and twos. And then we just naturally kind of start talking to them in our content because if those are who our clients have been, then
Right,
those are the examples we think of, those are the things that we
right.
write about, and so on and so forth. So I think that's a part of it. I think another part too is because of that drama triangle kind of thing.
Mm.
The way I kind of think of the visual for this is if our main job as a coach, facilitator, healer, mentor kind of person is to essentially be a lighthouse in terms of marketing and sales. Like if we're meant to really shine our light, to be in our genius, to help people to the best of our ability, we're kind of selling ourselves and our community short if we're essentially seeing our community, our people, as these like little tugboats that are out at sea. And if we don't trust that they're going to make it to the shore,
Mhm.
and so we're trying to like save the tugboats and turn on the light and be like, well, I have to turn it on, otherwise they're all going to die,
Yeah.
then that's like that, what we program into our marketing versus a subtle shift where even though the action might look the same, the energy we're programming into it is completely different if we're believing, of course, they're going to make it to shore. However, it might just take a little longer or be a little bit more bumpy of a journey. So by turning on my light, I'm going to help them get there faster, smoother, easier, but we're like seeing them as this empowered person, this
Yeah.
empowered person creator. And I always say, like, see them as millionaires, like oftentimes we are assuming and projecting our own kind of money scarcity stuff onto people and assuming that they can't afford it, assuming this, assuming that. And we do that in our marketing as well, where we're kind of being apologetic, we're kind of trying to justify things. And this can be such a subtle kind of thing. It can be things like using the words like so and but and like and and if that makes sense. Like if we keep saying these subtle little things over and over, because of course we're human, I say these things too, but
Yeah.
if we're saying this kind of apologetic energy into our content, then we're usually attracting in people who really resonate with that from that drama triangle kind of energy where they're like, oh great, she can save me.
Right. Yeah. And then it just feels heavy. It just starts to feel heavy.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And it can be really uncomfortable to speak to essentially bigger problems, right? Like this brings up all of our stuff to think,
Right.
okay, well, if I'm going to speak to people who, let's say in the entrepreneurial sense, where they're not beginners and they're further along in their business, they're going to have different problems than somebody who's brand new who can't figure out what they want to do for their business and who they want to work with. So if we're kind of claiming that and we're making it's not a bolder promise per se, because it's not about guaranteeing results or anything like that. But if we're speaking to people who, let's say, are making 10K a month, like
Hmm.
their problems are going to be about scaling and refinement and refining their message, these types of things. So we have to speak to like higher level problems that we're solving,
Hmm.
which usually means that people are investing more money in us, not always, but typically.
Yeah.
And basically, I think a lot of us freak out a little bit about more responsibility. What if I can't actually do it, especially if we've been playing in the sandbox that kills our confidence?
Yeah.
And we end up having this
Yeah.
this belief system that it gets kind of skewed about ourselves and our capabilities, even if we do know, like I have the experience, I can do this, I have done this. We
Yeah.
kind of waver, I find, a little bit in the energy, and then our content isn't as potent, it's not as bold, and bold doesn't mean like neon
Yeah.
colors, but
Yeah.
just our own courage, our own boldness to really be who we are. So I really think a lot of us dilute our message, we dilute who we're speaking to because it is a little bit scary to like fully own it, to fully put ourselves out there and basically hold the line for the right people to come in, especially because there's a lag effect, I find, that happens when we up level our message, our offers, our pricing. Sometimes this happens, sometimes not, but sometimes our audience, they aren't gonna necessarily kind of come with us. And sometimes the sales have a little bit of a gap and a lag
Yeah.
effect
Hmm.
that happens. And then a lot of us kind of start that courageous path and then we go, oh,
It's
like
not
I'm
working.
not
Let me go
seeing,
back.
it's not working, like leads aren't coming in, sales aren't happening. So then we go back again. And I feel like there's this loop for a lot of people that play out in this industry.
I know I've done that. I did that about a year ago when I came out into sales coaching because I was doing like manifestation and money mindset when I first became a coach and then shifted into business coaching and because I couldn't see where and my coaches that I chose to work with back then couldn't see that like, oh, hey, you've got 2 decades in like pharma sales experience selling high ticket offers, you know? Like I had this mentality of I'm starting all over again. I'm at 0, as if I'd never had a job before. You know what I mean? And so there was like a lot of that. I don't know why it says my internet connection's not stable, but hopefully it'll it should be good. Um, but yeah, but then I went into business coaching and there was like a lag there because it was a whole new ball game, right? Like a whole new who are you speaking to? Who are you messaging and stuff like that, and and trying to build a hot audience from people who I literally had marketed in the past to a lot of beginners, a lot of people that were struggling with money, and even those simple shifts around not focusing on people, are you struggling to sign clients, right? Like people who are in the 1 to 2 are struggling to do things, whereas the threes are, for example, they're more like, you're tired of just signing 2 to 3 people and you're ready to sign 8 to 10. Or, you want more than a handful of people saying, I want to join your mastermind again, instead of, just maybe squeaking by with one person signing on again, versus some of the other beginner problems, like you said, and scaling your offers. And, because I was thinking about this today, because some people think of fun things and I'm like, oh, scaling your business. Like you can have a 10K business just off of like one-on-one. You know what I mean? Like
Totally.
people
Yeah.
can have a six-figure business just off of couple clients. And so I think for a while, like for me personally, if anybody else is a business coach out there, I put people at 20 to 50K months at a different pedestal, thinking, oh, well, they've got to be like, you know, so crazy successful, when really people who want 20 to 50K months could be bringing in, 3 to 5 right now and easily make 20K if they have the right message and they're speaking to the right people, like right message, right person with like the right frequency of getting your message out there. And I think that last part of the frequency and what you just like, I love that you just brought up the gap, right? Like the lag. I mean, I'm like, what's that 3 letter word that you used that had an A in it? The lag. That is such a big thing to like really give yourself grace on, because and that was a question I was going to ask you for like the audience, because I know it's going to come up and it's such a great topic to talk about. But like if you've been routinely directing your content at the ones and twos, and then
Mhm.
all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, let me switch to the threes. Like, can you tell, like from your experience, what to expect with that? Because I know sometimes I saw like an instant, like, oh yay, there's somebody popping into the inbox, but it, like, full transparency, it took a while for it to become like warmer and hot, because you're kind of like, I see it as a different niche. You know what I mean? Like you're pivoting into maybe even more specialized products and a way, like a nuance, right? So, but I'd love to
Yeah.
hear about your perspective on that too.
Yeah, yeah, I agree because I think there's so many factors on this because let's say somebody has built a really huge audience
Yeah.
and they're really already quite engaged and there's all types of people and they kind of launch a higher level offer. It's almost like expanding the offer suite and it could go really fast, really smooth. I've had clients who have like 50,000 person audiences, like say in like the birth coaching niche and industry, and they decided to start kind of basically just higher prices, working with women who were like out of victimhood, who were wanting to, work on their pre and postpartum kind of journey together, and basically speaking to a more empowered buyer, and boom, like sold it out. And it was almost like their audience was like waiting for it, like they
Yeah.
were ready for it. There was people. I've also had clients who have maybe smaller audiences or even big audiences, but like maybe like less engaged or targeted
Yeah.
audiences. And they make this shift and it's like crickets.
Yeah.
And I feel that is the hardest but most important part of making the transition is to basically hold the line, become unwavering. And,
Mhm.
sometimes, because there's factors to this, like if somebody is going to go into like total financial scarcity and then backpedal, like they would be better off before they make this change publicly to set themselves up financially to
Mhm.
be okay with the lag. Maybe that means they launch a mini mastermind or they take on one more private client and they have to be willing to be of service to this person or these people. They can't be having a weird funky energy of like, I don't want to work with you anymore, but I'm going to for the money, but more
Yeah.
about seeing the bigger path and like seeing the bigger vision and being okay with the fact that you're still serving and helping people and you're also choosing to evolve. Because I feel like if we're in total scarcity and we make the transition, a lot of people then end up just going back in this disempowered energy to what they were trying to evolve beyond. So like thinking strategically about it, I think is an important piece. And then doing what you can do, because everyone has their own amount of time and schedule and, grit, like that they want to put into things. But if it were me, or when I think back to me and I've made these changes and sometimes I didn't have not that I have a huge audience now per se, which I feel like is a good reminder for everyone. You don't need a huge audience
Yeah.
to have big months in your business, but more importantly is like how much of a community do you have? How much of a movement have you
Yeah.
created? How hot is your audience? Because if you just go from talking to one to twos and then literally kind of making it me centric and saying, well, now I am doing this because
Yeah.
I am worth it. And if you're ready, come on, like, let's do this. Like,
Yeah.
maybe some people will buy, but
Yeah.
I think it's a totally different energy to say, hey, you know what? I am here to really step up. I'm here to create a movement.
Yeah.
Where I best shine is helping these kinds of people. Like, be transparent, bring your people
Yeah.
on the journey with you.
Yeah.
But then also do what you can in your power to build quickly a hot audience. So, like, if that were me, what I would do is I would make very frequent, very clear authority building kind of content that does speak to that type of person to like really claim it and put it out there. I wouldn't just pepper in the occasional post that makes it clear. It's like every post will be related and clear to that higher level person and relevant to them, like kind of run it through a filter. And then I would
Mhm.
plug myself in as much as I could to the network of people who are in those kind of higher level circles. So I would get myself on podcasts. I would go on networking calls. I would get in the room at events, like whatever floats your boat. But I would basically move up, and who I'm surrounding myself with to expand my network and my ecosystem to bring more of those people in. Because I think that's where a lot of people they don't do that. They just have their past audience and
Yeah.
then they're frustrated being like, where are the people? Like, do they not exist?
Yeah.
But if we don't already have them and like, yay, celebrating people who maybe already do, but if you don't, then you can really quickly shift that and not have a big lag, but it also requires a level of input to get the output. I think a lot of us are trying to like cash out the ATM, but the ATM is empty. Like we
Yeah.
haven't actually put a deposit in there.
Yeah.
Even if we feel like we've been at this for a while in terms of building business. And like you said, we're not at the beginning,
Yeah.
but in some ways we kind of are in terms of who we're speaking to and getting the authority built up for who people associate us with where they go, oh yeah, her, like they think of us
Yeah.
with those things. Like that doesn't always happen overnight, but
Yeah.
also when you show up and you have that content and you're putting yourself out there, I've had people find me literally one day out of nowhere, binge my stuff, and then sign up for a five-figure offer the same day. And I've had people who take 5 months or 5 years
Yeah.
to get to that point too.
Yeah. So many good things. Yeah.
I could talk about this all day.
I know. Well, it reminds me so much like when I first started, like it just reminds me of it like from a sales rep perspective. Because you are your own sales rep, right? Like you
Yeah.
are the sales rep
Yeah.
for the company. And when I started, and like say I had my territory and all of a sudden like you don't always keep the same one. Sometimes from year to year they're like, okay, we're like cutting reps out or we're adding more in. So all of a sudden you have a brand new territory and you don't know anybody there. So you have to go through this again,
Yeah.
like establishing here, obviously they're like, oh, I needed a Lantis rep and you're the Lantis rep, but like some Lantis reps suck, like some of them are complete assholes or they don't show up or they get, they're at happy hour at, 12 o'clock, like they don't serve their people. So like if you've got to establish your own, authority again there.
Hmm.
And so it's so true though. Like, and I remember back in my very first territory, my my manager, like we were, they'd do field rides where they'd come and spend like a day with us once a month. And it was usually like pretty stressful because you're like, holy shit, I can't just like listen to the radio and like, like got like somebody in my car talking to me like all day long. This is so weird. Like it's my decompress time. But I remember we got to the first account and he was like, okay, now what I want you to do. And he was like pretty intense. I was on a performing team. They had just won like district of the year before, and they were like poised to do it again. And I was like 22 years old and like brand new. And he said something I didn't expect. He was like, "Listen, when we go in this account and for the next 2 months, I don't want you to sell this product to them at all. Like, I don't want you to even bring it up. If they bring it up, it's okay, but I want you to spend the next month or 2 learning about them and asking them questions and finding out about their concerns, building that relationship. I want you to
Hmm.
focus on the relationship here and getting to know everybody before you try selling at them." And I was like, it didn't make any sense to me. I was like, "Are you sure? Like, wasn't I hired to sell to people?" And he's like, "This is a different animal. Like, you are not a transactional sales rep. You are like a consultative sales rep. You are a business consultant to them, like a product specialist." And so it's so clear to me on the online space how this translates into low ticket offers and high ticket offers, where the lower ones are those more transactional, where you need to be selling it 10 times a day and mentioning it. And it's just like a quick little conversation versus really getting deep into somebody's, vision and goals, and how every single person is going to use that high ticket offer maybe slightly differently and have a different application to their own business around it, just like the higher ticket specialized products that I sold for 20 years. And so when like it's so funny though, because when you were talking about how people expect like their audience to take over right away, it reminded me of there were multiple product launches that we did where at different various companies where upper management expected everybody to just welcome it right away and like switch all their patients to the new product, and they'd like throw all of their energy into this launch, and a lot of times it was a slower uptake. I mean, sure, there were anomalies here where like certain accounts, were like, okay, we're switching immediately, we see the value, and they, it wasn't like a bunch of drama, but like for the most part there was, I mean, usually 3 or 4 months later it still hadn't taken off, and but it's not like they gave us an option. Like you said, be all in, like, cut the ties, like, don't go back, be unwavering. And it's so true because like if our launch went poorly after the first poorly, and it's just giving people time to change their habits, right? Or to recognize a different set of value there, right? And just like when you're switching and selling, higher priced offers or switching your clients, um, they didn't give us an option to go back and sell the old product. They were like, nope,
Yeah.
cut ties. They're like, eventually you're not going to get bonus on it. So stop talking about it. Like, get people switched. You know what I mean? So it's so true. Like, if I impress that in all of my clients and in all of you guys listening, like, you've got to commit and be like, there's no other option. I'm not going back. I wasn't happy there. This is a better product. This is a higher, like higher standard for myself and for the people I'm serving, and a higher way for me to shine. And like you said, like for you to be able to like shine with your audience and express your full genius, because to me that's what makes you magnetic, right? When you're having these
Absolutely.
conversations and it's lighting you up, you don't need to go do like 2 hours of breath work, a meditation, journal about where you're going, and then do some future pacing and a new vision board every single month. You've got, you're like
Yeah.
excited and you wake up and you're like, holy shit, do I really get to work with these people? This is so cool. Like, what's going to happen today? And I think that's where, it, not sticking with it is where a lot of people, I think, fall off the train.
I totally agree. And how you mentioned kind of the comparison of corporate and then our own business structure. I mean, many of us leave corporate for so many different reasons, but I think one of them is, even if it's not the core reason, is you don't get to pick who your bosses are. You
Yeah.
don't get to pick who your coworkers are.
Yeah.
Yet we go and create our own business, and then we often surround ourselves with basically the equivalent of shitty coworkers in
Yeah.
terms of clients that we don't really enjoy. And I'm
Yeah.
like, why do we do that? And then we put ourselves in our own kind of linear business
Hmm.
money making kind of thing where we think, oh, well, I have to get to this milestone to get to that milestone. And I basically have to earn my way up my own
Yeah.
corporate ladder when that's not really true. Like, I think there's a little bit of a level that it's not that we have to pay our dues, but we have to be masterful. Like, we have to have experience. We have to actually be able to help people have results. And that takes a bit of cutting our teeth, when we start our own business for sure at varying time intervals. But I think when we work with high level clients, whatever that means to each person
Yeah.
listening to this, we have to be okay with the fact that to some level it means we're probably going to leave some people behind.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean we're saying unfollow me, I'm,
Yeah.
like we
No.
might even still have lower ticket offers that serve those people, but we're not really speaking to them anymore. And that can be hard, I find, for many of us to be okay with, like, oh, I'm leaving them behind. Like some of our existing clients might not renew with us anymore. They might not be able to afford our rates, or our mastermind message changes, and people who are in there now might not renew because we're calling in other people and the dynamic is changing. But that's a part of the growth. And I find so many of us in this industry, even if we're good at what we do, we've made money to a certain point, it can still be this subtle discomfort of the uncharted territory
Oh, yeah.
of expanding the capacity. Like it's a totally different animal to have 10 private clients and one group program to having, like I have like 75 clients right now. Like that's a
Yeah.
totally different amount of space you're holding, responsibility that you have, the things that go along with it. And I think that is something that stops people subconsciously or subtly from basically expanding their message and
Yeah.
working with higher level people is, can I hold it all, or what if I let them down? And not even because you're not good at what you do, but more that scaling kind
Yeah.
of energy of having more people, more responsibility. They're paying you more money. You're holding, it's a difference between having 5 people on a group Zoom call versus 50, of
Yeah.
making, meeting people's needs, helping them still get results. And I think a lot of people don't actually um, have the skill set because we don't know what we don't know. So I feel like there's also a level of skills that can be learned and implemented really quickly and easily. But a lot of us kind of bump up against that, and then we feel like there's something wrong with us, or maybe we're not actually ready, when actually it's can literally be like, get on a call with a mentor who
Yeah.
has worked with that many people to help you run through the scenarios of
Yeah.
how would you deal with that? And then you're like, oh, okay, I can do that,
Yeah.
or like knowing you have someone in your corner. But I think sometimes we like lone wolf it,
Yeah.
and then we feel that we don't know how to deal with these scenarios. So it must mean that we're not ready. And then we start backpedaling again when that isn't actually what it means.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just an experience and wisdom thing. And that's why mentors are so amazing.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love
like
it. Yeah.
so invaluable to have people. And I think that's the shift too I see for a lot of people as they work with higher level clients. And there's exceptions to this 100%, but I think as a generalization here, a lot of us as we work with higher level people, we want to work with people deeper, and
Yeah.
we want to work with clients who value long-term
Yeah.
mentorship. Like they're not looking for the quick fix. And, like let's say if you're a relationship coach, it doesn't mean that you're not helping people find their soulmate and you're just creating this weird codependent dynamic so they stay with you forever. It's more about thinking strategic. So maybe you're, also if you have the skill set or you want to learn the skill set to help people in their relationship so it's long lasting and
Yeah.
people trust you and you help them find their partner, like you could potentially support them on their marriage, like if you're
Right.
passionate about it,
Yeah.
or I have clients where they have great results and they keep working with me because I know their business, and they're like, okay, I've had great results, like let's keep going, as
Yeah.
opposed to, okay, cool, I got to that money in my business, bye.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's also a part of the puzzle for many of us in that next kind of echelons of expanding our message and type of person we work with, is seeing our offers of how can we create more continuity, how
Yeah.
can we create longer lasting, deeper support and transformation, and long, like clients who value that longer term relationship. Like they're not looking to coach hop for band-aid
Yeah.
solutions.
Right, right. Ugh, oh my God. I could continue going on for this forever.
Me
Maybe we
too.
can have you back and we'll talk about this. We'll just do a part two.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love it. Okay. Well, I we've got to wrap up now, but can you tell everybody where to find you. And I'm going to put the links in the show notes. So everybody go follow Jenna. I definitely want to continue this conversation going. And, I'm sure y'all will love Jenna's content too. Like if this, interview was any indicator, right? That's the word I'm looking for. So tell everybody where they can find you.
Yes, thank you, Cassie. Thanks so much for having me here and letting me share and have this great conversation. And where I hang out the most online, I would say is Facebook. I know some people love it, some people hate it, but it's definitely been my kind of favorite, longest lasting platform. And I'm on there. My name is Jenna Faye Madden. I know you said the links are below, and I really love making new connections, new friends. So if you do send me a friend request, say hi, let me know how you found me so I can accept your requests and connect with you. And I also hang out a lot on Instagram and TikTok. And you can find me on there with my business name, Soul Meets Strategy. So I'm on there as well. And basically, if you search me up or go to my website, Soul Meets Strategy, you can find all the places, all the links, all the things. But like I said, the big thing is relationships. So
Yeah.
I would love to connect with
Yeah.
you if you found me through here, and let's be friends.
That sounds amazing. Well, thank you, Jenna. And y'all go follow Jenna. And maybe you'll see us on an IG Live collab at some point. Maybe we'll continue it there.
That would be amazing.
That'd be fun.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here, everyone listening, and thanks again for having me.
Oh, well, thank you too. And I'll see y'all next week. Bye. If you loved this episode of I'm Not Salesy, then go ahead and hit subscribe so that you're notified of the next episode. And also leave a 5-star rating and a review. And if you send it to the link in the show notes, we will send you a present in return. We also love to feature reviews on the podcast as well. So we'd love to feature yours. So go ahead and send a screenshot to the inbox and come find me on social media. I love hearing what you're up to and how you're becoming not salesy too. I'll see you in the next episode.